going to erase it here shortly, but I just wanted to point out, this issue of the Sabbath day that caught us last Sunday has stuck with me, and so I went back home and I started pursuing it, and it's quite fascinating. So I'm thinking that we will reserve the topic of the Sabbath day for a separate series. It's very profound, very deep, very beautiful. Just in a word, what I think we're seeing here actually is the Sabbath day that Hebrews is talking about. The Sabbath that Moses was talking about, and that's the Sabbath that extends throughout the whole of creation up to the moment of Christ's death on the cross. And then with Christ's death on the cross, it would appear that we have come into the other Sabbath that St. Paul talks about in the epistle to the Hebrews. Remember, he says there's another Sabbath. There was another Sabbath and another rest. There was another rest. And it is this other rest of God that was opened up by Christ's death. And so now, following St. John, in one of his epistles, he says, beloved, it is the last hour. So, what is now hiding beneath the movement of cosmic time, biocosmic time, is the last hour of the last hour, midnight, that opens onto the 8th day. So when we come to church on Pascha night, I think there's a reason that we serve the Pascha service at midnight. Even though as the priest gets older, it becomes harder and harder to do it at midnight. It takes longer and longer to recover. But it's because of the significance, it's the iconography, it's the symbolism. We're coming to the end of creation, we're coming to midnight, to that point where the old passes over into the new. And at that point of midnight, we come to a gate. And I think it's also deeply iconographic. That not here at St Herman's, but I understand at other Orthodox parishes, many of the faithful will come to the Paschal service. They'll make the procession with everyone, and then at midnight, when we are standing at the gates of the church and they're ready to open up, the gates open up and many turn around and go home. The rest of us go into the church. So when we go into the church, we're going into the beyond. We're going into the 8th day. Those who don't come in, they're going back into the world. I just think it's deeply significant and iconographic. So I'm thinking that that's what we are looking at in the mystery of Christ's Sabbath rest. It's the other Sabbath rest that has opened us to the midnight hour. And in the midnight hour, we are now in the last hour, as St. John, the theologian, says. So now, for this morning, I want to make my introduction following a text that I've just written out. Because we're drawing near to the end of summer, so it's time for us to start pulling all of this together. There's so much that we have not covered, that we have not talked about. You can get the sense, I'm sure, how deep this is, how profound and how beautiful it is. And we've only lightly skimmed the surface. We've been water skippers, just skipping along the surface. This morning, let me introduce what we're going to talk about with this little thing. So perhaps it has not escaped you. The curious or surprising source of the biblical word that we've bent our ear to in our effort to listen to the biblical vision of erotic desire and the mystery of man as male and female, or the mystery of gender. So we have followed the sound of that voice, of the biblical vision. It has been a beautiful sound of music. The music, I dare say, that we have been hearing is the Song of Songs. Reflect on why that book is called the Song of Songs. I suggest it's because this is the song of all songs. And it is the song of the heavenly bridegroom's love for his bride and of the bride's love for her heavenly bridegroom. This is the music that we're hearing as we bend our ear to listen to the vision of the Bible on erotic desire. As though entranced by its beauty, we have followed this sound of music, and where has it brought us? This is what I'm thinking might be surprising to us, a curious fact to us. It has brought us to the Temple of Israel. Israel, I have to review this. I've actually seen 2 or 3 different definitions given for the name Israel. One of them that comes to my mind is, it means enlightened of God, illumined of God. I think another translation of Israel that I've seen is Prince of God, from Yasar and El. I don't know what Yasar is. I have to review what Yasar is. Yisrael, enlightened of God, let's say. And this temple that we have been led to of Israel is the temple of creation. This song sounds forth from the hidden bridal chamber of the temple sanctuary. That is to say, the temple sanctuary is the bridal chamber where this song is being sung of the heavenly bridegroom for his bride and the bride for her bridegroom. It's a concert. It's not a solo. It's a concert. 2 voices. That of the bridegroom, that of the bride. And so this song is sounding forth from the hidden bridal chamber of the temple sanctuary. And this temple sanctuary is a chamber. It's a chamber. A hidden chamber that extends through all things as the center of all things. You remember we've drawn from the Syriac Christian tradition. You have the visible plane of the church or of creation. You have the invisible plane of the heart, and then you have the heavenly. So the picture that I'm drawing of this is that the bridal chamber or the temple sanctuary is this chamber that extends, as it were, through all levels, through all the different planes of creation, as the center, as the sanctuary, the bridal chamber. This chamber, as you can see, it goes out into the visible plane, and there, let's say it takes form. You see what, you see what I'm drawing? And it's not by accident that I'm drawing it like that. It's like a chamber that goes forth out into the visible world, and if you lay hold of it, what am I drawing? The tree of life. If you lay hold of fruit of the tree of life, you eat and drink this ambrosia, that is magical. It's like a magical potion. And it opens you and takes your soul into this chamber, into the heart, the invisible plane of the heart, and there we come upon an inner gate, as it were. An inner gate that opens out onto, that if you open this gate, it opens out onto the deep that's beyond all things. In other words, it opens out into the heavenly sanctuary of the heavenly temple of God. So this is what I feel, as I ponder what we have been talking about, as I try to distill it into its essential outline. This is what comes to me. Do you see it? Can you see it? Does it make sense? Somebody say something? Does this
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's all I needed to hear.
Your tree requires a little bit.
Sorry. Sorry. Okay, but no. Okay. So that's what we've drawn. Now, come on in, Katie. So I want to fasten onto the significance of the fact that as we have traced, or as we have followed the sound of the biblical vision, it has brought us to the temple and to the bridal chamber, which is the sanctuary of the temple. I want to fasten on that. It tells us that erotic desire, which is the relationship between the lover and the beloved, right? That's the relationship. And the lover and the beloved are God and his bride, God and his creation. That erotic desire takes shape. It takes form, or let's say it takes shape in the form of the creation. So that we've been talking about the logos of creation, or the principle of creation. It is this erotic movement between lover and beloved. The lover pouring himself out and giving himself to the beloved receiving the love of her beloved lover, and giving herself back to him. To establish this erotic movement into a communion in which the two now, they remain two. He's still the lover, she's still the beloved. He does not dissolve into her, she does not dissolve into him. And yet the two are one. As Adam would say, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She is me. And this, how would you call it, this gestalt, this structure, is the fundamental structure of the creation. It's the fundamental structure of the creation. And what are its constituent elements, to speak of it in a very prosaic, non-poetic way? It's male and female. Do you see that? Those are its constituent elements. Yin and yang. The Chinese were not so stupid. So that the mystery of gender, male and female, is it's the form of this hidden erotic movement of lover and beloved. So with this, I feel that we have, I feel that we have described the essence of it. I feel that we have come upon, the biblical theological vision of erotic desire and of the mystery of man as male and female. It is the mystery of creation. It's the mystery of creation. And it reveals that creation is not like the scientists of today would have us believe, that it's just the chance coming together of protons, electrons, whatever, and that the fundamental movement of the universe, of physics, is energy, or whatever it is, just this impersonal, blind, movement of material particles. No, what the scientists are seeing is the visible form of the invisible mystery of creation. They're seeing the material form, the material covering of the immaterial mystery of creation. And when I say material, I mean to comprehend in that term both what's visible and invisible to us. I mean to comprehend the whole of creation. No, follow me and stop me if you're not. I don't mean to divide between the material as the things that we can see, the things that are visible, the things that we can feel, and the immaterial that we can't see, that we can't feel, that are also part of the creation. I mean to comprehend both the material and the immaterial parts of creation under this one term, the material. Drawing from the etymology of the word, the mother, so that the whole of creation that the scientists are discovering is the studyable part of the mother, of the creation. But there's a hidden part of the creation. That's what this vision, I think, tells us. That is, for lack of better words, we call it immaterial, but it's not immaterial in the sense that it's microscopic. It's not immaterial in the sense that it's just so tiny, just like the inner particles of an atom that you can't see, but they still have a material an aspect to them. We're not. This is talking about something that absolutely has. There's no atoms here. There's no protons, no neutrons, nothing, and nothing there. It's absolutely immaterial, spiritual, and this is the spirit of the creation. I kind of lost where I started out on all of that. So that the mystery of creation so what the scientists are studying and what we study in the schools is this creation that we can see, that we can study, that we can measure with our instruments, however fine our instruments may be. What I'm maintaining from what I hear in the biblical vision is that there's something even beyond. And that's the immaterial, the spiritual center of the creation, the bridal chamber. And that center, that bridal chamber, the sanctuary of the temple of creation, where is its inmost, where is its altar? Its altar would be the human heart. And in the human heart, the altar of the human heart, that's where all of creation opens onto God. And so the creation is gathered around the altar as male and female, as yin and yang. I'd say that vision, if you will, struck me as I was driving the other day, and just kind of hit me. Okay, so because I was at the Y, at the Y you see all kinds of crazy people.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Martin and I go to the Y together. I was thinking, okay, so let's say that homosexuality is normal, the way they want us to believe. What is the vision of creation that is implicit in that proposition?
Well,
Just think about it.
Whatever it is, it's not biblical.
Most certainly it's not biblical. But I mean, there's another element also, is there not, to this mystery of gender and erotic desire that we have just described? It has a consequence. What is that consequence? It's a beautiful consequence. Life. That's what comes forth from this erotic union of God as the bridegroom and man as the bride through the woman. It's what comes out from the union of the male and the female. You put a male and a male together, sorry. Put a female and female together, sorry. It's sterile. There's no life. It's not of God, so I leave it to you to decide what it's of. It's not of God. It's not of life. It's death. It's a spiritual death. It's the material form of spiritual death. Katie?
This is just reminding me that C.S. Lewis in his commentary on Paradise Lost pointed out that hell for the devil is in many ways a condemnation to eternal boredom.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It is. No, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that really that inner emptiness, that inner loneliness? I mean, what could be more terrible than being alone and absolutely bored? Honestly. If you have pain, at least you have something to distract you from your boredom.
That's true.
All right, so with that, so that's like an overview, and that's like giving to you now the kind of the heart of it all. This is the mystery of gender. This is the mystery of erotic desire. This is its biblical setting, its biblical context, and anyone can enter into it. Okay, you have attraction to the same sex. Well, you don't have to give in to that if you don't want to. I mean, if you want this that is full of life, you can enter into this. You can enter into it through the church. Maybe not. Maybe married life isn't for you with another woman or the opposite gender. But the point here is that there's a deeper that the erotic desire that is moving through you, it goes deeper than carnality. It goes deeper than the body. There's a spiritual depth in it. And you can choose to pursue that spiritual depth in yourself that will bring you into this biblical vision of creation as male, female, yin, yang, where there is this erotic movement between lover and beloved that brings forth life, spiritual life as well as physical life. All right, so let's have questions, comments, observations, and I'm going to, in the space here, I'm going to reset here and figure out where we're going now. Yes, Tim?
So, one question I guess that comes to mind is, before we were created, the angels were created.
Okay.
And I don't believe the angels are sex.
No, they are genderless.
So.
But they are still beloved.
So there's an interesting question, I guess, that comes to my mind. And we don't know why we were created. I mean, there's different claims within the Orthodox literature. We were meant to replace the third of the angels that fell, and things that you can't really quantify. But gender and eros, does that figure? It doesn't figure. Gender doesn't figure into the creation of angels.
I would say it does.
How are they gendered?
Yes, right.
How?
Yes.
How are they gendered?
Because I'm looking at gender in a much deeper way than just carnality. I'm looking at gender in terms of otherness.
Okay, but they don't create life. They're there to, and there's different ranks of them, right? There's cherubim and
Yes,
seraphim.
yes. But what is the chain? What is the chain? Isn't the right word. What's the force that unites them all? I mean, they're in hierarchies, right? So you have the Father, and then you have these cascading levels.
I think there's like 9 or 10. Something
Yes. And so what's connecting them all? What's uniting them all to the arche, the source? It's a hierarchy, which means sacred. Arche means source. And so the hierarchy is a movement, that has to do with a sacred source. The sacred source is the Holy Trinity. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And even in the Trinity, in this deeper understanding of gender, there's gender, which sounds a bit scandalous and surprising, to say the least. But the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, they are in perpetual movement. It's a movement of love. And in this movement, the Father is the source. Because the Son is begotten of the Father, the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. So this source is this movement of love is centered on the Father. But in this movement of love, the Father is in the Son. I could take you to a passage from St. Maximus the Confessor. It's a whole page. And the Son is in the Father. And then St. Maximus goes on to say the Son is in the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is in the Son, and he goes on. And he does it for each one of them. The Holy Spirit is in the Father is in the Holy Spirit, and he all the way down. So then, what this establishes the Holy Trinity in this movement that, of course, is captured in the icon of the hospitality of Abraham. It's a movement, and it's a circling movement. And so for that reason, in the Greek, it's called the perichoresis, which means circling. And in this movement, what do you see? You see a lover and a beloved. Each one of them, each person of the Holy Trinity is a lover and a beloved. A receiver and a received. Active and passive, if you will. Now, Genesis 1:26, chapter 1, verses 27 and 26 through 28. Let us make man in our image, male and female, and in our likeness. Male and female will make them. If you don't have a doctrine of the Holy Trinity, then that passage becomes somewhat of a riddle that you are hampered. I mean, you're crippled as you try to solve that riddle. But once the Holy Trinity is revealed to us in the Jordan, the baptism of John, that's the answer to the riddle. How is it that man is made in the image and likeness of God in the deepest sense? It is that man is made like God as a lover and a beloved, as is each person of the Holy Trinity. And as we were starting to show, we're going into Genesis chapter 2 last Sunday, and I was suggesting that as we move from Genesis chapter 1 into Genesis chapter 2, we're actually moving from the outer courts of the temple of creation that are described in Genesis chapter 1. We're moving into the inner court of the temple, the sanctuary, the Sabbath rest in Genesis chapter 2. And as we follow the creation of man in Genesis chapter 2, there are all of these subtle indications that are just very intriguing and very fascinating. And for example, Adam created from, as it says in the Greek, the kun, which means the loam, the clay of the ground. From the clay of the ground, but Gia is feminine, and it's the earth. And so it's like the mother, it's like the bride. And Adam is created from this loam, from this clay, which means clay, but also it is also used to describe the walls of a house. And so, Adam is God fashions him from the ground like this lump of, like a mound of earth. A mound of earth. I mean, that's like at the holy mountain, the sacred mountain that is at the center of the world. And so, mountain, temple, they're the same thing. So it's like, it's as though, it's as though Moses is saying, as though God is telling Moses, because Moses is getting all of this from Mount Sinai, as though God is telling Moses, I made man into a temple from the clay. The walls of the temple, the body, are made from the clay. And then it says he planted a garden in the east. And then he brings man into the garden. In the garden is where God puts Adam to sleep and draws from his rib woman. As you recall, the Lord is crucified on the cross, and the indication in John is that he's crucified in the garden on Golgotha, because it says not far from there in the garden there was this new tomb. So in the garden, the Lord is put to sleep. He's put to death, as Adam was put to sleep in the garden. And then you remember what it says, and the soldiers pierced his side in the English, but in the Greek, it's the same word. Pierced his rib, and immediately there came out blood and water, which we take to be the mystery of the church, the sacramental mystery of the church. So, in the church, now we're drawing all kinds of connections here. This is where we start to get lost if we're not careful. But the church, which is the blood and water that pour forth from Christ, the sacramental mysteries. She's called the bride of God, and the church is in the liturgical text. For example, just last Tuesday at the Transfiguration, we refer to the Theotokos as the mystical paradise. It would take some doing, perhaps, to draw all of these connections together so that you could see for yourself that there is in the liturgical vision of the church, the liturgical life of the church, there is this, how would you say, this connection, even this identity between the Virgin Theotokos, the temple, a garden, paradise, So that when Adam is brought into Eden, I don't think it's by chance or by accident that it's in Eden. It's in the mystery of the garden. It's in the mystery of the, in other words, okay, he's taken into Eden. And Eden is pictured as being a particular part of the creation. So it's like Eden is the sanctuary of the creation. And it's in that sanctuary of Eden, in the garden, that Eve is brought forth from Adam. So it's like Adam is this temple, and Eve is the sanctuary that's brought forth from inside of him. And I may be crazy, you know. There may be somebody who knows better than me than all this and watching the YouTube here and say, Father Paul, you're nuts, I'm gone. He's turning off the YouTube right now. So anyway, that Adam is made as the temple and Eve is brought forth from him. You know, in other words, his body is shaped like a temple, like 4 temple walls. And Eve is brought forth from within his rib, from his side, as the blood and water came forth from the side of Christ, which became the church. She is brought forth from him as though she's the sanctuary that was hiding within him. And she becomes, so that the woman, as woman, is the concretization, if you will, the embodiment of the inner man, the sanctuary. It's interesting to note, by the way, that when Adam is formed from the earth, it's like the earth is virginal. He's formed from the virgin earth. So anyway, I'm getting lost in all of this. We're trying to stay tethered to that here. What I'm drawing out is that the creation of Adam and Eve is drawn for us in these very fine paint strokes, as it were, so fine that you really have to look closely to see them. Is drawn in such a way as to show that man is, to show how man is created in the image and likeness of God. Such that, like God, each person in the human nature is a lover and a beloved. And man is created in such a way that he's created in such a way, he's male and female, so that the male is able to enter the female in a physical way. Not just spiritually, but in a physical way. And the female is able to receive the male in a physical way. So in other words, what I'm saying is that even in the way that man is structured in his body, you know, the carnality of man is not a sin, it's not evil. It is itself, it's a carnal image of the spiritual mystery of this perichoretic movement of love in the Holy Trinity. So that male and female, in this sense, because they're seen as the embodiment of the image and the likeness of God. I mean, I brought in a lot of things here, kind of from all over the place. Did you get lost? Does that make sense, Tim?
Well, it's kind of rejoinder to this. So, when we say love, at least in English, because
right,
we have a lot of
right,
but love, I think of, at least in one usage, it's part of the passions, like hunger, anger, sorrow.
Then it would be desire.
That's how we use the term sometimes.
Yeah, so it'd be desire.
But eros,
yes,
seems to be more of a dynamic
yes,
soul. It's
yes,
not a passion.
Yes,
it's
correct.
A dynamic of the
correct,
soul.
correct.
So, if you think of eros as a dynamic of the passion, at least one question from
Of the passion?
thought,
of the passion?
I mean, of the soul.
Soul, okay.
Eros is not, as it were, gendered.
Correct.
And this is
Correct.
the reason why I asked the question. At least according to a few Orthodox sources that I've read, when the angels are created,
Yeah.
they're created outside of time.
Correct.
And at that moment, they can either incline towards God or
Correct.
away from Him.
Correct.
That's why they cannot come back to God.
Yes.
They incline
Right, right,
against
right,
Him.
right, right.
So there's some kind of quote unquote erotic
Yes,
moment there.
exactly.
Angel.
Exactly. That's
But
the
it's
point.
not gendered.
Exactly. That's the point that I'm making. It's not gendered in a carnal way.
So So we're different because we're in time.
We're in time and we're body.
And we can go towards and away, towards and away.
Well, yeah,
We
even
can
in
slide
time,
back
yeah.
and forth,
But
right?
you see that the movement you're describing is no different than the movement in the angels.
Right, and that's a dynamic of our soul, of
Yes.
their will.
Well,
So-
yeah, their inner whatever.
Yeah, so when they make the decision not to incline towards God, that's it. For eternity, they're against God.
Yeah.
And that's a function of eros.
Yes. So this is the point that I'm driving at, that the whole creation, even God himself, remember the passages we read from St. Maximus the Confessor, even God himself is impelled by his erotic movement. Erotic movement originates in God. And so the whole of creation is in this erotic movement. That is to say, this movement of each creature coming out of itself, looking for its source, which is in God, looking for the beautiful and the good, which is God. The angels are doing that. Creation is doing that. Man is doing that. Each individual person is doing that. That's the movement that's driving all of us. And what I'm saying is that movement in us, in the creation, has been embodied, has become incarnate, if you will, in the form of male and female. That's how that movement, that's the form of that movement. So that the gender, male and female, is like everything else. It's kalos. It's good. It's beautiful. It's holy. It's sacred. Because it is in the image and likeness of God. Katie.
Just to draw a connection back to something we touched on briefly earlier, holy eros might be described as the yearning for the other stepping outside for the other,
Mm-hmm.
whereas, the moment that the angels fall in might
Mhm.
be considered kind of, frankly, angelic homosexuality, inclined towards the self.
Sure.
instead of the
Or
other.
I would say lust. Perverted erotic. Because you see, this is the torment. When they turn away from God, when we turn away from God, we've talked about this before, that erotic dynamic does not disappear. It's still there. It's just as much in force as it ever was. But now that dynamic will never be satisfied. And this is how we said, this is when we start to go mad. In the Dionysiac orgy. Madness. That is perverted erotic desire. So, as I recall, we drew a parallel between the Dionysiac orgies and the myrrh-bearing women coming to the tomb. You understand? When they're coming to the tomb, it's like the woman, the bride, being called by the bridegroom to the bridal chamber. The tomb is the bridal chamber. And they come, and they see angels. They see angels. They're in on this too. The angels are, they give the pronouncement. Understand that the very mystery of sexuality, carnal sexuality, all the mythologies of the world understand this. This is one of the fundamental patterns of religion, of comparative religion, as Mircea Eliade would say. Sexuality has to do with life and death. The goddess is both a white goddess and a black goddess. The uninitiated see the black and the white goddess as two different goddesses, but the initiated understand her to be the same mystery. As the white goddess, she's the mother who gives life. As the black goddess, she is death who devours the children, so that she can give life again. So you have this circle of life, as it's called. So here's the angel at the tomb of the Lord. We're at the mystery of death, the end of life. But look at as we reflected on it, you consider the reaction of the myrrh-bearing women. It says in Mark that they too went into ecstasy, just like the myth of Dionysius has the women going into ecstasy. But in their ecstasy, they went mad and they tore Theseus up into pieces. The myrrh-bearing women go into ecstasy, and where do they? They flee in terror. They don't say a word. It's as though, you wonder, what's being said there? They didn't say a word to anyone. Could that be taken to mean they fled in terror, or in fear, in the fear of God? They fled into the stillness of God, the depth of God. I mean, Theirs was their ecstasy transfigured them. You understand? When they came to the tomb, coming to the tomb of the Lord, they're coming to the Sabbath rest, which is the temporal aspect, if you will, of the spatial aspect of the bridal chamber. The Sabbath rest and the bridal chamber, or the sanctuary, as I see it, are one and the same thing, but just different aspects of the same thing. Because in the Sabbath rest, the death of God, in the sanctuary, the bridal chamber, God and man join together. The bride and the bridegroom become one. So the myrrh-bearing women come to the tomb as to the bridal chamber, as to the sanctuary of creation. This is God's tomb. God's in there. You know, God is in his heavenly temple. He's in the sanctuary of his heavenly temple. Only what they discover is that he's not there, right? He's not there. Where is he? Well, he tells Mary Magdalene, I'm on my way to the Father in heaven. He's on his way to the heavenly chamber in the heavens, and he's calling us there too. I mean, I don't know if this is clear or not. I need to take more time, I suppose, more effort to make this more coherent. But what I'm seeing is that the Holy Gospels are telling us a deep mystery. It corresponds. Let me throw this out real quickly. It corresponds to this. I'll illustrate what I'm trying to say with this. Apparently, at least in the Near East, all of the nations, the peoples, there's like this monomyth. And in this monomyth, they all have a tree. Well, okay, here's the earth. Well, as you know, the tree goes way down. It has roots that go way down. So the tree is a beautiful image of the goddess. And then from the tree, there is the consort of the goddess in the form of a serpent, either wrapped around the tree or hanging from the boughs of the tree. So here you have the feminine, the goddess. Here you have the consort, the masculine. And this is, on some of the steles, this is illustrated or it's interpreted by the presence of the goddess on a throne here with her consort also. And then you have a man and a woman over here approaching the tree, approaching the god and the goddess and her consort to partake of the fruit, which is the fruit of life or knowledge. Now, this is at the top of the mountain, which is also a sacred symbol, the cosmic mountain. So they ascend the mountain and they come to the tree of life, which is also the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, one tree. Joseph Campbell seizes on this and goes to Genesis chapter 2 and 3, and uses the Hebrew, or interprets the Hebrew myth to be the psychological projection of a fundamental Jewish schizophrenia. Because they have split the tree into two, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. And he's quite persuasive in the way that he presents his argument. And especially if you don't like Jews, give it to them. They're schizophrenics. They're conflicted within themselves. That's why they're so neurotic. But there's another possible interpretation. Now, this is like the central icon, perhaps you could say, of the myth of the goddess, the monomyth of the goddess. This would be the symbol of the sacred marriage, the Heros Gamos. I mean, and you see it in the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. To know, for a man to have union with a woman is to say that he knows her. And good and evil, through sexuality, you have both good and you have evil. You have both pain and pleasure, or pleasure and pain. You have both life and death. So there's good and evil. So it's quite clear to me that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is a symbol of carnal sexual union, which in the ancient mythologies, in the mythologies of the world, is like it's a cosmogonic, it's a creational motif. This is the fundamental moment when all things come to be, through the mystery of sexuality, male, female coming together and creating life, and all the way down to the depths where even the creation comes together from the union of the God and the goddess. Do you remember from our discussion about, from our reflection on St. Ephrem of Syria, how he draws the Edenic mountain? It's higher than all the other mountains of the world. Remember that? I should draw it on a level with this so that you see. It's higher than all the mountains of the world. Do you remember where he places the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Halfway up. So let's put the tree over there. That's where he puts the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, this is how I'm seeing it. I'm thinking what the Genesis writer is telling us is that this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the highest tree and the highest mountain in all of the other myths of the world, in the vision of the prophets, is not the highest tree. There's another tree. There's another mountain. You remember, Adam and Eve could not see this tree because their vision was blocked in Ephrem of Syria, is blocked by the boughs of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that extend far out. And both St. Ephrem of Syria and 300 years later or so, St. Maximus the Confessor, seems to be a kind of a fundamental motif of patristic literature. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is understood to be the mystery of creation, the world, which is centered, comes to being through the mystery of sexuality, male, female. So what I'm saying with regard to sexuality and the vision of the Bible is that the union of is that there's a deeper point of erotic union than that of creation. It is that of the soul in her immaterial depths with the immaterial God. There's a deeper erotic movement. There's a deeper erotic union, deeper erotic love than what we experience in the world. There's a deeper, if you will, there's a sexuality that is beyond sexuality. And that is the sexuality, if you will, that is the origin of all sexuality. And that is what all sexuality is in the image and likeness of, you could say. So in this sense, the angels, the immaterial beings, the heavenly beings, the whole creation is caught up into this, is brought into being in this erotic movement of God's love. And this erotic movement of God's love at each level of creation, the level of the different hierarchies, all the way down into the level of the creation, it takes its own form, its own shape. And for us on earth, it takes the shape of male and female. And through male and female, we are given the ability to participate, not only both physically and spiritually, to participate in the mystery of God's erotic love through the sacrament of marriage, or if we're called not to be married, then the sacrament of the angelic life, where we fight ourselves to transcend our bodies, but not our erotic desire. We do not transcend our erotic desire. Rather, we step into our erotic desire, as it were, as into a mighty torrent, a mighty river, in order to follow its current into the chamber of our soul, where we become one with God, where God, as it says in the Psalm, satisfies every epithemia with good things. All right, it's time to go.